Okay, guys, welcome back to the second session of the Spotlight of the Masterclass. And today's topic is protecting the castle, debt recycling. And who best to discuss this is Amanda. But first, housekeeping.
Yeah, so today we're looking at debt recycling, which, as Dragan said, is the second masterclass that pairs with our first on rent vesting.
Yep.
So what we're looking at is comparing, while you're an investor, are you renting where you live or do you own where you live, and what's best? Of course, it will be individual. So that leads into the housekeeping here, that we're not your broker or your accountant. We haven't done an assessment of your personal circumstances. So the advice we're giving is general. So when we say which one is better, we're talking to a broader audience and we're weighing up the pros and cons in a range of circumstances, only some of which might apply to you. So it's up to you to look at what's relevant, look at what's not, take what is relevant to you. And then when you want to discuss or nut out the further details, then you can book in a call with Dragan. So what we've got there is our legal disclaimer, just to be really clear that we're not talking to you as an individual, we're talking to you as part of a broader audience. And then to zoom in on some of those sort of closer, nuanced aspects of today's topic that you might want to look at more specific to your circumstances, then book a call with Dragan.
That's right, guys. You've got your QR code, or please visit propertysessions.com.au/15 to book a 15-minute discovery call with myself, and we can pretty much discuss where you want to go, your wants and needs, and formulate some sort of a strategy with you from there. Okay, a little bit about myself. My parents are from former Yugoslavia, came here in the 70s. Hardworking parents, loving parents. Grew up in commission housing, was one of those kids that was surrounded with other kids that had a lot. I was at that time in that position where, I want what they had. But of course, my parents couldn't afford it. Fast forward in my 20s, I started my own business, and going back, I had that sort of drive to sort of have that want and need that I didn't have when I was younger. Going back to my 20s, into my business, started investing in property in my early 20s. Fast forward today in my mid 40s, I could say I successfully in property investing in my business as well, and teaching my kids what to do and not to do as they're growing up, and embedding that mentality into them. So when they do get into their adult life, it comes as nature. So over to you, Amanda.
All right. So my background's a little bit different. I've got 20 years of nearly 20 years of investing experience. I started at 21. I went into a career as a secondary English teacher. I taught for nearly 10 years in an all-boys school, which was a lot of fun. Always had property going on in the background. It was always an interest and a passion of mine, but not something that I turned into a career. I was always taught, never make your hobby your day job. Here I am. Which I did after I had my kids. So I felt that after COVID, during COVID, having kids, teaching just didn't really suit my lifestyle anymore. There's no real work from home options with teaching. I've still got, kids that haven't started school yet. So it's very difficult to have kept teaching. I loved it and I do miss it, but it just doesn't fit my life anymore. So I decided to turn the hobby into a day job. So I still teach. This is still a form of teaching, but on a topic with a more willing audience. And a topic that I am a lot more passionate about and with a lot more experience on, good 20 years of learning the ropes from very good teachers and very good mentors. I come from a family of investors. There's a few developers around in the family as well, not massive ones. But there's always somebody to turn to for advice, trusted advice, which I think is half the battle with property investment. It's who to trust. There's a lot of information. The internet is great, but it also leads to overwhelm and just constant bombardment of information. So a lot of the clarity for me has come from, I can pick up the phone and call this person or that person because they've paved the path for me. And that's sort of, I suppose, my pay it forward, in this capacity. That's why I'm here. So let's get started.
So Amanda, what is it? What is debt recycling?
What is debt recycling? So this is where we're investing in property but you already own the home that you live in. So you might be somebody that, spent their 20s or 30s saving really hard. You might have got married, had kids, or, bought something on your own to live in. You've paid down a good chunk of your mortgage and you're going, you know what, I've got to start thinking forward to retirement now. I'm going to look at property investing. And we get a lot of clients in their 40s or maybe even their early 50s, and they've sort of run the maths and they've gone, I'm 20 years away from retirement. I can't afford to retire. What do I do? So this is for those people. So debt recycling is a financial strategy where you're converting your non-tax deductible debt. So the mortgage on your home, the interest repayments are not tax deductible because your home is not an income producing asset. You live in it, you're not collecting rent. So because there's no income, there's no tax benefits. So you're converting non-tax deductible debt like your home loan into tax-deductible investment debt, because an investment property is income producing. It brings in rent. Because it's income producing, the cost of making money is tax deductible. So the cost of making money, for example, interest repayments on your loan, become a tax deduction. So instead of having a mortgage on your home, you then restructure to have a mortgage on an investment property, and you introduce a tax benefit and an income stream at the same time. So it works by using the equity in your home to borrow funds to purchase an income producing investment. So you're building wealth while reducing your taxable income, because remember, the equity in that investment property and the equity in your home both belong to you. So over time, this process helps replace bad debt, i.e. not tax deductible debt, with good debt, tax deductible debt, to get those tax advantages, that equity and that income all in one hit. So this is a really good strategy if you understand how it works. So as I said earlier, we don't replace your broker, we don't replace your accountant. These conversations are important as well with them for structuring and access to finance. The conversations with us are about how to invest well with the funds that you have. So if we have a look here, how does debt recycling actually work? So the first image there, let's pretend that's the place you live in. Let's say you live in a, beautiful $2 million, lovely home, and you've paid off most of it. Okay, you've done really well. You've been there a good few years and you've chipped away at that mortgage. And you've minimized that mortgage to the point where you don't have financial stress. You're meeting those repayments quite easily. And you go, you know what? My risk appetite says I can take on a little bit more here. All right. So what you might do is look for an investment property that is quite affordable. So the example that I've given there is, say you're looking for an investment property worth $1 million. Okay. Now, the idea is you would like to be able to purchase that investment property with a 20% deposit and stamp duty paid in cash. Okay, so about 25% of the value of the property needs to be put down in cash. Now, that 25% does not have to come from savings. You don't have to manually save $250,000. You can take that $250,000 out of the equity of the home that you live in.
Yes.
Okay. So you can refinance, you go to your broker and you refinance the home that you live in, and you say to your broker, I want to extract $250,000 in equity so that I can buy an investment property. And be honest with your broker about your intentions, okay? You're not withdrawing $250,000 to do a 380-day world trip.
Yep.
Tell your broker what you're doing, because they will help you structure those loans in the best way. Talk to your accountant about what you're doing so they help you structure your purchase in the most tax efficient way. You come to us for the actual purchase. So we don't replace your professionals. You still need them for your structuring, your tax and your access to finance, but you're strategizing with us on this whole process.
That's right.
So you take out your $250,000. So you've now got what's called a split loan. You've got whatever you had remaining on your loan, that's still there. That doesn't go away. You haven't paid that off. That's there. And that remains non-tax deductible because it's not income producing. Then you take out the $250,000 deposit. Now that $250,000 is a loan against your principal place of residence, but it's split. It's compartmentalized. It's in a different box. So even though it's against your principal place of residence, to the taxman, the purpose of that $250,000 is investment. So any investment portion of your loan, the interest on that becomes a tax deduction.
Yep.
Okay. So that $250,000, and you'll see it split, when you log into your net banking, it'll come up as a separate loan against that property. That $250,000 then becomes liquid to you, and you then use that as your cash deposit and stamp duty on your investment property. So say we're purchasing that $1 million investment property, you've taken your $250,000 equity to cover your 20% deposit and your stamp duty. You then take out a $750,000 investment loan against that investment property. So that $750,000 loan also tax deductible. The interest repayments are tax deductible, and you're now earning a rental income. So you've now used your home equity to cover the deposit on a purchase that produces an income and gives you a tax incentive. Okay? So if you don't split the loans, I've just got a little note there. If you don't split the loan when you take out that $250,000 equity, then it's not tax deductible, because the way you will have structured it is that it's against the principal residence, not used for the purpose of investment. So this is why I said to you, be really honest with your broker and accountant. I don't know why some people think, I don't want to tell them my business. They need to know so that they structure it correctly. Because if you go to your broker and you say, oh, I need $250,000 equity, and they go, yeah, okay, no worries, and they write you a $250,000 loan. And then you go to your accountant and you go, oh yeah, I bought an investment property. Here it is. It's 80% LVR. I got a $750,000 loan. That $250,000 has kind of disappeared because you didn't tell your broker what you were doing with it, and you didn't tell your accountant where it came from.
And I've seen many people make that mistake.
Yeah, because they tell their broker this much and they tell their accountant this much, and that $250,000 gets lost in their structuring. So tell your broker, I'm withdrawing the $250K as a deposit for that. Tell your accountant, yes, there's an 80% loan on my investment, but the other 20% actually came from a loan as well, which is also tax.
And include any expenses for that investment property as well, whether it's small renovations, whatever it may be, even the buyer's agency fee, that can be put against it all. Yeah, that's right. That can all be tax deductible.
Don't hide anything from your broker or your accountant. Be really clear and really upfront about what you're doing so they can give you the best advice as well. Okay. I mean, we'll always try to warn you and tell you, hey, don't forget this, but always be open and transparent.
Definitely.
So down there, I've got the focus is on the purpose of the loan, not the security. So even though you've taken the $250,000 from your castle, from your home, and it's a loan against that property, the security is the home, but the purpose of the loan is investment. Okay. So doing that helps you access the ability to invest without having to manually save a deposit, because you've got that equity available to you through debt recycling. Now, the thing you've got to be really careful of here is your loan structure. We don't want to cross-collateralize. So I said before that the $250,000 is secured against your principal place of residence as a split loan. Okay. The $250,000 is still against your home, not against your investment. Okay. So your investment property is at 80% LVR. The $250,000 is for the purpose of investing, but it's secured against your house. So if your investment property turns sour, and for whatever reason, the bank goes, we're taking that. Hopefully it doesn't get to that. But if it does, then only that $750,000 is at risk. So if the value of that property drops, or, they have to panic sell, it's a mortgagee in possession sale, they don't recover the value of the mortgage, they can come after your other assets. So what you want to do is keep the mortgage on the investment property within a safe limit, 80%. So that $750,000 is recoverable to the bank. Now, the risk that you carry is that you still have the $250,000 against your principal residence, but you don't lose your home, because your home is not tied to the investment mortgage. Okay. So that means that if the investment fails, if you're cross-collateralized and that $250,000 is against the investment as a security, then when they sell that security, any loans tied to that security must be repaid, because the security no longer exists in your portfolio. So if you sell that investment property, then you have to pay back the $750,000 plus the $250,000. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a mortgagee in possession sale. It could be if you choose to sell it. You don't want to give the bank more money than you have to. I hate giving money back to banks. Once you've got it liquid, keep it, reinvest it, make it grow, don't give it back. Okay. So if you sell that property, you only want to give back the $750. You want to keep the $250 and use it again somewhere else. If you've made profit on that investment and you've chosen to sell it, keep as much of that equity as you can. Keep the loans low on it, because it's still the purpose of the loan. It's still tax deductible, whether it's secured there or secured there. It's still the purpose of it, but you're not cross-collateralizing that security so that when you sell that one, it forces you to close out loans somewhere else.
Yep.
Have I explained that clearly?
I think so.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah.
Because in my head, it's all, but hopefully that made sense. Okay, because the full amount is still tax deductible. You still borrowed 105%, the 5% being the stamp duty. The full amount is still tax deductible, whether it's secured there or secured there, but you don't want to cross-collateralize. That is a broker conversation. They can explain that to you, or we can explain that to you better. But just be really aware when you go to your broker, be really, really clear. It needs to be a split loan, not a cross-collateralized loan.
Definitely.
I really hope that's clear. If it's not, book in a call. Because you must get that right if you're using this strategy. Okay, we don't want to lose the home we live in, and we don't want to give too much money back to the bank when we sell the investment.
But we also got to be very clear that it takes a lot for you to lose the property. Banks don't like to take properties from owners, so don't be too scared about that. It takes a long time, and it's a long process for that to happen.
If you look at our other masterclass, the 10 myths one, we actually addressed that.
We did actually, yes.
So it's one of the myths is, again, as Dragan said, it's a question that comes up a lot. People worry, oh, what if I overcommit and over leverage and then I risk losing everything?
Yeah.
As Dragan said, there are a lot of steps, and we go through what those steps are as one of the myth busting. You're not going to lose your house tomorrow. There are laws around, how aggressive a bank can be in repossessing you. Unfortunately, the problem is not the banks, it's actually the inaction of the client. So people think, oh, I can't make that repayment, and they just sort of ignore the bank, or they try to hide or run away, or they try to scramble to make their repayments. As we address in that myth busting masterclass, the more proactive you are with your lender, the more cooperative they'll be in return. So if you ring them and go, look, my property's empty, I can't make repayments for a month, can we hit the pause button? They will. They don't want to lose your business. It's a lot of effort for them to go through a foreclosure process and give you notice and all the rest. So,
but it makes them look bad as well. It's
Yeah, because they've got to lend responsibly, and every foreclosure, it leads, it piles up into a potential audit trigger for them. Are they lending responsibly if these many loans are closing out? So just be proactive. Watch that other webinar. If that's something that scares you out of doing this, that might help to reassure you. But the point of this is just get your structuring right.
Yep.
Because I think a problem we have as well is people will go to their broker and they'll use the wrong language. And then the broker will do what the broker's been asked to do. And then the client's used the wrong language or asked for the wrong thing. Oh, I want to take out equity and do this. Okay, so the broker will take out the equity and then you will do that. But you haven't specified, do you want a split loan or a cross-collateralized loan? The broker's just done what you've asked them to do, but you haven't understood what you've asked them to do because you haven't, you know what I mean? Like, they give you advice based on the information that you give them and the questions you ask.
Yep.
But they're not going to put aside an hour to educate you on all this stuff. There's no return for them.
Yep.
Okay, so you've got to get your information from the people where there is a return, because otherwise they're not going to give it to you, right? So for us, we give this information so that investors can invest confidently and with full knowledge. So if you want that information, you kind of need to be proactive in accessing the right people and asking the right questions so that you can ask for the right things from the right people when the time comes.
Yeah.
Because once you cross-collateralize a loan, you've got to refinance everything to untangle it all, and it becomes messy. So,
advantages of this method.
Advantages. How does debt recycling help you grow your wealth? You've probably already worked it out, but let's have a look. It makes your equity work for you. So instead of, having a fully paid off house where only the equity in that house is growing, you spread your eggs across multiple baskets and you have multiple bunches of equity growing. You might pull out 3 lots of 250K and go and buy 3 properties if your principal residence is worth enough to do that. The more eggs you spread, the more little equity growth castles you build.
Exactly.
That helps you retire faster because each of those also produces an income. So as the debts on those pay down, more of that income goes into your pocket. There's your retirement income.
Yep.
So once you stop working, you have the cash flow to retire.
Yep.
Tax benefits, again, how aggressive do you want to be? So if you're still working when you do this, you might, negative gear, you might purchase things for equity rather than cash flow because you're still earning an income to live off. You're not relying on rental income. So that will, I suppose, affect your aggression levels in terms of investment. Something Dragan can give advice on. So if you're living off an income, you might invest more aggressively compared to if you're semi-retired and only working part-time, you might take a more cash flow focused approach to your investing. Generates cash flow. So as we said, as those LVRs drop, cash flow goes up, your retirement income is secured. Rinse and repeat. So if you have enough equity in your home, rinse and repeat. Take out multiple deposits. After a boom, all those investment properties suddenly have equity. You might not need to touch your principal residence anymore. You might take deposits out of those investment properties and use those to multiply. 1 property becomes 2. Next boom, those 2 become 4. Next boom,
Right.
those 4 become 8.
I always find out with my clients, it's usually the second or usually the third property where they get that aha moment. They go, okay, wow.
The compound.
The compound of that, suddenly, that 500K property, and they have 3 of them 2 years or 3 years down the track where they've grown 10%. Suddenly they've got, 150, obviously, within a year growing
And it gets
compound.
to the point where you're not manually saving deposits anymore. The equity in the market.
You don't even have to think of deposits anymore.
All you have to do is be able to service the debt.
Yep.
But the rental income adds to your actual income, and
Yep.
it's okay.
And I always get a lot of people saying, when I have 2 or 3 or 4 or more properties, isn't it harder? No, it actually gets easier.
Because they're paying for themselves.
They're paying for themselves and the equity is compounding on more properties. And you just sit back and go, now I get it.
And your LVRs are dropping too.
That's right.
So,
Next, risk of
Risk.
this method.
isn't too good to be true. Depends on your risk tolerance. So how much extra debt is comfortable for you?
Yeah.
The view I always take is if an investment property turns sour, you sell it. In this case, you've got the home you live in, you're protecting the castle, which is the name of this masterclass. Your castle is protected because all your loans are split loans, not cross-collateralized. So if you need to, you just offload dead weight and then you bring your shit back up to the surface of the water.
You did say ship, didn't you?
Ship.
Okay. Checking.
With a P. Because, in a rising ship.
Oh, I get it. Okay. All right.
Metaphor.
All right.
Cash flow pressure. Moving on.
Moving on.
Cash flow pressure. So are you purchasing properties that are cash flow positive or cash flow negative? So if you purchase too many negative properties, can you manage that shortfall each week? Or do you need to balance, positive with negative? So just making sure you're purchasing cleverly to manage your cash flow. That's where someone like Dragan can help you strategize. Interest rate fluctuations. Remember, even though your loans on paper are at 80%, they're really all at 105% because you're borrowing your deposits out of other properties. So there's no cash here. It's all, as my dad calls it, imaginary money because you're just borrowing against borrowings. So you've got to be really careful that even though on paper they're 80% loans, they're 105% loans. So if interest rates go up, you've got to be able to cover it on the full amount because you've borrowed deposits from other properties. If it gets too hard, offload 1 or 2, it's okay. Or do your maths, make sure you can cover the cost. Bearing in mind, rents do go up over time and your equity position kind of helps as well.
Yep.
Psychological impact. Some people get a bit uncomfortable the more they buy because they freak out. Some people get more comfortable the more they buy. Try not to outpace your confidence levels. Try to, again, like Dragan said earlier, focus on education and understanding what you're doing so that the psychological impact is comfortable. Because, if you talk to people are really good at putting the fear of God into you. They go, why would you take on that much debt? If you know the reasons why you're doing it and you can rationalize and understand the psychology and the reasoning behind it, then you're fine. But if you're talking to someone at the family barbecue that's got no idea which way is up and then you're trying to explain this to them and they're freaking out, they're going to make you freak out. So try not to, I call it contagion freakouts. Try not to buy into that. Once you reach a certain level of investing, you'll find there's nobody to talk to about it because you've sort of outpaced the average sort of mum and dad investor, and you're starting to come into a different level of investing, and it's harder to find like-minded people. So that's sort of the threshold where you either excel or lose your nerve. Try to be one of the ones that excels. There'll come a point where you stop talking to people about it. So just make sure you
I still get family members trying to educate myself, and anyway, they've only got 1 or 2 investment properties.
Well, everyone's got an opinion based on the media, or they just parrot
Uncle Bob at the barbecue.
Uncle Bob. Yeah, you smile and nod and go, sure thing, Uncle Bob, no worries.
Okay, guys. So again, please book in a call with myself. It's a free 15-minute discovery session. Happy to answer any questions you may have. You've got the QR code here, or alternatively, you can just go to propertysessions.com.au/15, and happy to take that time with you one-on-one. Thank you for this spotlight session. Amanda, thank you very much. And until the next one, see you there.
See you there.